Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Lee Cantor here, a special edition of Small Business Fuel. I got with me Paul Wilson, Area Director, SBDC. Welcome, Paul.
Good to be here. Thank you.
You know, we've been doing this show for a little bit. You've been hosting mostly, but under this crisis of, small business fuel, part of the fuel is financial. And there's an exciting program that the Small Business Association and the government is providing for entrepreneurs and small business owners that maybe you can shed some light on.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we're in some unprecedented times, with this whole virus situation it's caused some immediate, almost overnight, right, negative economic impact for small businesses. And so fortunately, the federal government actually acted pretty quickly to really create a disaster loan program that now has multiple offshoots. But let's say, generally speaking, a disaster loan program to respond to the immediate needs of small businesses. And then the reason, I'll say it's unprecedented because typically, right, the SBA doesn't loan money except for in disasters, but those disasters are usually kind of categorized as natural disasters. So say fire, flood, hurricane, tornado, or something to that effect. And so this is the first time in its history that they've actually created a loan program that was specifically related to an economic disaster, if you will, for small businesses.
Now, part of the uniqueness of this process, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that typically when you get a loan from the Small Business Association, you're actually getting a loan from a bank it's being guaranteed by the SBA. In this case, to expedite it, I guess you're going right to the SBA and they're kind of loaning the money directly without the bank?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one of the programs and probably the initial program that was launched and it's called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL, EIDL. And again, yes, so you typically, in a normal, what we call an SBA loan, you would go to a bank and you would go through the bank's process, you're right, to get a loan that's backed by, or I guess you can call it an insurance policy of the SBA to actually provide, that backing for that loan. But in this case, because it is considered a disaster loan, you do go right to the SBA, and the easiest way probably to get there is SBA.gov. And again, look for the link that says coronavirus, again, if you're a small business. But again, that specific loan is, again, the EIDL loan directly from the SBA, and all the process and applications and information they're asking for is going to be right online, as well as the submission process will be online also.
And then can you walk a business owner through some of the stuff they need to have handy in order to apply for this loan?
Absolutely, and that's a good point, because as you get ready to do this, is to probably maybe save yourself some time and even some potential frustration, right? You want to have all your documents handy, and so I'm going to actually I'm pulling up a document myself so I can look at it and just kind of read you some key pieces of information that are required for this loan. And again, I'll say that I'll speak to some of the parameters as I'm getting you some of the details, so that way companies will know. So the disaster loan piece, the EIDL, right, is going to actually, in terms of the amount, up to $2 million for borrowers as they go through that process. Now, again, that doesn't mean everyone's going to get $2 million, but they're going to look at things, like your existing financials, maybe in the last year or so, right? And they're going to be looking at some key things, as it relates to what were you already doing in business in terms of your revenue. So if you made $100,000, let's say last year, they're not going to give you $1 million this year, right? Because the goal is not to help you grow your business. The purpose is, right, of just responding to the immediate issues that are happening right now. So that's, I think, a key element for just people to understand that there are some other factors in play here. That's not just, again, you being able to access all the money that you want at this time. It's not quite a piggy bank, if I can say it like that, but definitely some specific information. So they're going to be looking for, of course, again, looking for your financials in addition to tax returns. If you haven't completed your taxes for 2019, then they'll be looking at some other financial documents. Potentially, again, your as I mentioned, your tax return. There's going to be a personal financial statement, and so anyone who has more than 20% ownership in your business. So if you own the business 100% by yourself, then it'll just be your information they'll be asking for. But anybody who owns, again, 20% or more of that business will actually they'll actually have to submit the information to, just to make sure, again, all the business owners are included in that process. And so those are, again, some of the key documents. There may be others, but those will get you started. And if there are others, they'll actually let you know specifically if there's some additional documentation that they may need based on what you provide initially. And
then they're going to also do probably a hard pull of your credit as well, right?
Absolutely. So they're definitely, I've heard someone say, I use the term, is more of a reflecting on your cash flow versus assets, right? So your credit, so it is going to be a hard credit pull from that standpoint. So it's definitely, again, a part of that process in terms of the documentation that they're going to be accessing, or part of the process that they're going to be accessing.
And then if you do qualify and you do get the money, it's going to be pretty fast, and they're going to kind of dump it right in your bank, right?
Well, there's two portions of that. Because the overall package and their evaluation of what you're going to eventually get does have to be somewhat underwritten. So that's not a quick process, and they've been careful to tell us what to tell people. So we generally are telling people 2 to 4 weeks, right? Just to stay on the safe side, because again, this is a national program that had to be rolled out really almost overnight. So you think about all the small businesses in the country, how many of them may be applying all at one time? These applications are not being evaluated by a computer that's just spitting out an answer, but it's a human being that has to review all of these applications, right? So that's really is what for people that, I know it's hard to be patient right now, but to be patient, to know that they're working as hard as they can. But again, that's part of the process. There is a part of it that is immediate, that literally was just enacted once the people have heard maybe the term Corona Cares Act passed, or the other term they've been using, the Paycheck Protection Program. Once that bill was passed, then there was an additional component that was actually added to the EIDL program, and that basically is a $10,000 advance. Now, that is what they're saying actually on the SBA website right now, is a 3-day turnaround in terms of as part of your application process for EIDL. It gives you the option to say, do you want a $10,000 advance? They're calling it advance loan. That's part of your overall loan package. Now, that part of that $10,000 is what, again, the SBA website is saying in 3 days could be deposited in your bank account, let's say, assuming that there's no hiccups in that process. And so that $10,000 advance is supposed to come within 3 days while they're still evaluating your overall loan package.
So hypothetically, for a business owner, say they have a business that is maybe last year did $250,000, say they apply for a loan for $100,000 and they get approved, the $100,000 might come within 2 to 4 weeks, but out of that $100,000, $10,000 of it might be released within 3 days if everything goes properly. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a good way to kind of describe it overall.
And then that way they get some kind of relief pretty quickly if everything goes as planned. And then they wait a little bit to get the rest of the money released. Now, this money is obviously, it's not a grant, it's a loan. What is the interest rate on it?
A good question. So right now that interest rate is actually 3.75%. And there's actually also with that a 12-month deferment. So that loan would not have to be paid back immediately. Again, there's a deferment period that is going to be applied to that. So you'll have also some time to, and the goal is right for you to help you get back up to running your business, and so that you don't, although it is a loan, again, you're not having to pay that back immediately. There's a little bit of space of time before those payments will be required to start.
And then at the heart of this loan is, like you said, this isn't kind of an investment to help you grow. This is to help you weather the storm and to kind of stay alive so that you can exist as a business going forward, right?
Yeah, and that's correct. And so that is why, again, they're looking at your financials and what you did, let's say, in 2019. And then what you were projected to do in some way, shape, or form, right, in 2020, and their overall calculation is going to be based on that, like with their formula. So that didn't just mean, oh well, like I said, I made 150 in 2019, I'm automatically get 150. No, that's just the one of the major factors, right, that they'll be looking at. And again, to your point, is not a growth loan like in a normal situation. But again, it is an opportunity to stabilize. And one of the other key things too is for a lot of people right now is critical. Let's say if a company has employees, to be able to help maintain those employees. So that benefits not only the company to keep those employees, employed, but also of course helps those employees themselves and their families, right? From that standpoint. So that's all a key part of that process as it relates to, again, helping businesses right now stabilize and hopefully kind of fend off any closures and things or mass layoffs or things like that that just kind of help them maintain until we turn to at least some sense of normalcy in the marketplace.
Now, you mentioned that the loan, the first payment's deferred for around 12 months after you get it. What is the period of time you have to pay it back?
So with the first with the idle disaster loan, it's up to 30 years, and again, that's going to be determined within the package that's actually presented and offered to the borrower. So there's going to be flexibility in that, but again, that's going to be up to the formula that they use. But again, it literally could potentially be up to 30 years. Is what's in the guidance and the documentation that's been provided to us. And the other thing is too, you don't have to accept either any or all of it once they offer it to you. So, and again, because there's some other programs out there also, right, that some people were worried, well, if I do this, can I not do the other one? Well, actually, you can do a combination of at least two of the programs. But the key is, and we'll get into the other program also, not using, let's say, the same money for different, not using the same money for the same purposes. Let's put it like that. So again, you just have to work with your CPA just to make sure that, again, as you are utilizing these funds, especially if you're getting from multiple programs, that they're utilizing the way that they were intended by the program. Because the other thing is they want to make sure nobody's, I use the term double dipping, right, or trying to take advantage of these programs. So there's some protection in there, as it relates to, again, just making sure that the funds are being used for what they were intended.
Now, is there any prepayment penalty if you say you accept the loan, you put it on that 30-year schedule, and you're like, okay, I'd like to pay this off in 2 years or 5 years? Is there a prepayment penalty, or is it something that you can just pay it off whenever you're ready to?
No, there are no prepayment penalties for that. So, yep, you can pay it off soon and quickly, and that'd be a good thing, right? If a business was able to do that. Now,
you mentioned another program. Why don't you talk about that?
Sure. So the other one, which was a kind of the second phase or second wave of the SBA programs that were rolled out, is connected to the I call it the $2 trillion economic stimulus package. Within that package, I believe there's $350 million that were set aside for small businesses, and that was actually called the kind of Corona Cares bill, right? That was connected to that overall stimulus package, and part of that, there's a provision called the PPP, or the Paycheck Protection Program, right? So this is a program that actually will go through the banks themselves. So the banks is the lender in that case, not the SBA. and it would be an SBA loan. SBA, I'm sorry, 7A loan is what this will be, but it'll be a little bit different, let's say, than the traditional 7A loan, because again, there are other provisions in there related to that a lot of people have heard in terms of forgiveness for portions of this loan. And so I'll kind of jump to that because I know a lot of people have been asking about that or been talking about it and hearing about it in the news. And so in terms of the maximum loan amount, it's up to actually $10 million per business. So as the idle was $2 million per business, in terms of the potential for the PPP, it's potentially up to $10 million. And again, it's going to be based on the size of that company and the revenues and their payroll, what they were already doing up to this point. Now, again, both of these programs, it really relates to companies that meet the SBA size standards. So somebody may be listening to this and, they're wondering, okay, who's eligible? Because we didn't talk about that before. So the idle, again, you have to meet the SBA size standards as it relates to, again, their different industry codes have different sizes where the SBA says under this level of employees or revenues, right, a company, is still considered a small business and is eligible for their programs. For the PPP, is businesses less than 500 employees from that standpoint, and that's in terms of the cap. Now, and again, the forgiveness portion is related to payroll costs. In particular, it's payroll costs that was between February 15th and June 30th. So let's say a person or a company was able to let's say they were awarded $500,000 loan because they qualified for it, and let's say there's certain costs that are being forgiven and specifically related to payroll. And let's say that number between February 15th and June 30th adds up to $250,000. Let's say, let's make up a number. Well, once that period has passed and they, and let's say all those expenses are calculated correctly and then submitted back to the lender will reduce that total loan amount that needs to be paid back. In this example, from $500,000 to $250,000. So that's a really very unique aspect of this loan that's different than the idle. The idle doesn't have a forgivable aspect of it. This PPP does.
But this one is more conventional as it's through a bank rather than the SBA directly? Yes,
correct. So it's coming through a bank, but it is an SBA-backed loan, and it has to be, of course, an SBA-approved lender, and in particular, a 7A loan approved lender. So most of your major banks are already that. Hopefully, and you can, whatever bank that you're banking with, ask them if they're an SBA-approved lender for 7A loans, and they should be able to tell you right off immediately if they are. They'll know if they are or not. So you'll be able to get that information from them directly. If you already have a relationship. If you don't already have a relationship with the bank, or let's say the bank you're banking with is not an SBA approved lender, you would have to identify a bank to work with that can help you. Because again, the application process will actually go through a bank, so you can't apply directly to the SBA for this loan.
So now, what are you hearing from companies as they're kind of battling to get through this? Are they just kind of hopeless at this point? Are you feeling some that are just doing, trying to survive by any means necessary? What are you hearing from kind of the businesses you're working with?
It's kind of a little bit of everything, and a lot of it, I think depends on the industry that the business was in, right? If the business was completely dependent on, let's say, people physically showing up in a location, of course, a restaurant, that's an obvious example, or any other type of, physical gathering business. I've heard, of course, a lot of co-working spaces are hurting right now, and others, right? And especially if it's also deemed not an essential business because of all of the, government orders to, for social distancing and to stay out of, gathering of congregation in terms of the number of people and limiting that. Right. So any business that's impacted directly by that, I think, is probably suffering the most right now if they haven't been able to, say, create an alternate way for the people to connect. The people, again, are still willing to invest in and pay for at that point in time. So again, I think it's industry by industry, but most industries have been impacted at least at some level. Again, some more than others. And again, in terms of, again, even hopelessness, I think it mostly, again, relates on a case-by-case basis. If a company was already in a strong cash position, and they can kind of weather the short-term storm as they're waiting maybe for some of these, disaster loan proceeds to come in, they're in a little bit better place than maybe a company who has been, struggling, or at this point, struggling immediately and doesn't have the resources to even weather a short-term storm before reinforcements come. They probably have different take. I think everyone right now is a little tense and a little concerned, right? Because there's also the unknown. We see what's already happened, but also, again, I think the part of that unknown is, okay, how long is this going to last? How long is it going to take us to get through this? To, again, like you said, get back to another side of normalcy, and will normal look like normal, or will there be a new normal, right? So with anything, the unknown is always the difficult challenge. But I say, generally speaking, entrepreneurs are a resilient bunch, and oftentimes, as we've seen in the past, the resilience of entrepreneurs oftentimes produce new opportunities, even in the midst of challenging situations.
Yeah, there's been a lot of major companies started during the worst of times, so I'm sure this time will be no different. And this is a
Absolutely.
great time for people to get to know their SBDC, I would think, because right now is why it would have been a good time to have a relationship with the SBDC in order to help you kind of navigate these rough waters. And like they say, the best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. I would recommend a lot of business people to get to know the SBDC, because there's so many resources that you can help a business with to give them the kind of the insurance policy and the cash, the ability to weather storms like this, to teach them kind of the right ways to run a business.
Yeah, absolutely. You're exactly correct. And even if you didn't come on board or work with SBDC before now, again, like you said, today is the next best time to plant that oak tree. Today is that next best time to reach out to your SBDC consultant. In an area that's near you, because again, we are here to assist businesses, and that's exactly why we're here. Whether it's a time like this, or just what we may have called a normal operating situation. But the key is, we're here to help you hands on, to walk with you through this process, and then also overall, just not just looking at what's happening in this financial recovery situation, but what's your business strategy overall? What's going to be your strategy that if something like this breaks out, or any other type of situation that maybe severely hinders your revenues in the future? What's your overall business strategy? To have a pivot point to say, okay, well, this happened, so here's our contingency plan, right, to continue to move forward with our business. And of course, hindsight is always 20/20, but probably most companies probably don't have a kind of business continuity plan, right? It's they do business as business comes, and their continuity plan for many people is hope. I hope nothing bad happens. But that's kind of like insurance, right? We all don't like paying for it, but we're all sure glad we have it when we need it. And I think and that's one of the things, again, the SBDC can definitely assist you with. Right now we know we're trying to get through this situation, but on the other side of this, absolutely, I would say continue meeting with your SBDC consultant, because then again, the goal is, okay, how do we help you start growing again? But then also, if business continuity is one of your needs, we can assist you with putting that type of strategy together also.
So, Paul, can you share the coordinates if somebody wants to get more information about the loan or apply for the loans that are available right now?
Absolutely. So definitely you can go to probably the easiest place to say is go to SBA.gov, and right on the front of their website, they definitely have easy access, right, to get information to what's happening, with the disaster loans and the coronavirus. So that's probably a good good starting point. But also the SBDC. You go to our website, georgiasbdc.org. That's georgiasbdc.org. Or just Google Georgia Small Business Development Center, or UGA Small Business Development Center, and it'll get you to our website. And again, we have a lot of resources in addition to the financial resources. Again, in addition, let's say the directions to get, because I want to clarify, we don't have the financial resources, but we definitely have the directions on helping you get there, as well as, again, some other resources related to your overall business, operations and business strategy at this time. That's available right there on the front page of our website also. So again, we are here to help, guide you through it, definitely help, businesses navigate this time frame. Again, it's new for all of us, but I'll definitely say our organization statewide and even definitely across the country, because SBDC is a national network also, but definitely here in Georgia. Can't speak for the rest of the country, but definitely here in Georgia, we've definitely marshaled our resources together and to make sure that we can provide, immediate and hands-on assistance for business owners as much as possible, during this time.
Yeah, I mean, your tax dollars have paid for this service, so business owners, time to kind of put those chips back on the table. So I would highly recommend getting more information about those loans. SBA.gov, it's right there on the front page, how to apply, or click the button to apply. These economic and injury disaster loan is meant to keep small business people going. So I would highly recommend taking advantage of it, because we're going to need the cash to get through this. And I don't think any business really is immune from this. So it's right there, SBA.gov, and just click here under apply for an economic injury disaster loan. Take Paul's advice and call your SBDC area director near you. They're usually affiliated with universities in your area, and they're there to help. And it's, again, no charge. There is no charge to work with the SBDC unless you're doing some specialized classes or anything, but there's counselors ready to help. So don't be afraid to ask for help. This is a tough time for a lot of business people.
Absolutely. So, and again, I'll just echo what you said there as we kind of wrap up. SBDC is not going to charge you for the help that we provide on a consulting side. And because everything that you can do on your own, right, in terms of applying for these loans, right? So anyone who wants to charge you to help you, ask a whole lot of questions. But again, I would really question them if they're charging you, because again, you can actually apply for all of this and all of these loans, right, online, and again, we're here to help you do that. So again, just be careful of people who are actually maybe trying to use this as a time to take advantage of people who are not aware of that.
Right. But the SBA.gov website is the official government website for the Small Business Association. And there's a big yellow click here button that says apply for an economic injury disaster loan. You don't have to pay someone to apply for you. You can do it yourself. And entrepreneurs are proactive, and we're problem solvers. I think that it's worth everybody's time to at least get more information about it.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me on this interview. Again, feel free to definitely reach out to the SBDC. We're here to help and help everyone navigate through this time. So it's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much, Paul Wilson, Area Director, SBDC here in Georgia. This is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Small Business Fuel.